great.
Yes,
Great, great.
yes, Ray, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to all the dignitaries and members present. I'm extremely honored to introduce Dr. Anita Madhok as a guest of honor for the day. I, Shrey Datta, on behalf of the entire PIBM family, welcome you, ma'am, an alumnus of Exeter Jamshedpur, a global HR professional, a creative writer. Ma'am is a renowned consultant and has an illustrious career spanning of more than 3 decades. With an emphasis in coaching for women in management boards, Ma'am has coached several CEOs, senior executives, and professionals who face significant challenges in navigating in the fast and changing environments. Ma'am specializes in emotional intelligence, talent management, performance management, and behavioral skills. Presently, Ma'am serves as the MD at Open Spaces Consulting. Also, she is the member of the board at Kahani Design Works, in addition to being the chairperson of the steering committee of the CII Indian Women Network, Mumbai. Prior to setting up Open Spaces Consulting, Ma'am was the dean at School of Business, NMIMS University, and SP Jain Management Center of Management in Dubai and Singapore. Ma'am is certified from the International Coach Federation at PCC level, gold standard in the HR profession. She is also a certified management consultant and a master trainer for the Global Professionals in Human Resource for the Society of Human Resource Management. It is an immense opportunity for all of us to have you here, ma'am, and I'm sure we will learn from your insights. The topic of today's session is the Survival Skills Shastra, what to learn to prepare for the new normal. Ma'am, may I kindly ask you to commence the session and enlighten us? Thank you.
Thank you, Shrey. It was very nice for you to introduce me. Yes, I describe myself as a organizational psychologist and a global HR professional. That's how I put a label on myself. And why, as an organizational psychologist, it's a very interesting story I want to share with each one of you. You see, it all began when I was very young and roughly 16, 17 years of age, much younger than most of the audience here today. And, this was way back in the 70s. And that's the time when I was applying for college admission, just finished from school. In those days, it was called Senior Cambridge. So I finished from school in the 11th standard in those days. I was the last batch to do 11th standard. And applying for college admissions. And I filled in all the forms and put all the backup papers. And someone had to go stand in line early in the morning, like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. In those days, there was no online submission. So my father said, I'm going to go stand in line and give in your form and come back, So I said, okay, wonderful. And my dad went and he came back, very soon. And he came back around 12:30 or so. I said, you came back so fast, and was the line very long? He says, no, the line was very short, and I managed to submit, and you're going to enjoy studying in college. And I put your form in for psychology honors. So I said, no, but I wanted to do economics, I wanted to do, if it was not economics, it was commerce. And if it was not commerce, it was, supposed to be English honors or history honors or something like that in Delhi University. He says, you want to go to Lady Shri Ram College, no? So I put your name in psychology honors. It's a very interesting subject. You don't worry, you're going to enjoy it. So that's how my career was decided. It was not of mind making, but it was destiny. And I have not regretted a single day. I've not regretted a single day not going to college and thereafter being called an organizational psychologist. I know many of you will be shocked and surprised at this particular incident. And the reason is that I know that most business school students agonize a lot over their careers. Some have gone to engineering and then decided to change and said, no, engineering is not for me. And why we are doing MBA, we sometimes don't know. Perhaps it is to further our career prospects. Perhaps it is to, get a prestigious MBA kind of a tag or a management kind of a tag. And perhaps, we don't know what better to do. So we decided to come to do an MBA. And even having come to an MBA, should I specialize in marketing? Should I specialize in finance, HR, operations, investment banking, capital markets, advertising? What should be my electives? What should be my choices? At times, these are very difficult to make. And I just wanted to share my story with you, because sometimes it is better to let go with the flow and make the best of the cards that are dealt out to you. And today, where I am, I have spent now more than 30 years, almost 40, in the world of human psychology and in the world of human behavior. And I have enjoyed every step of the way. And the cards that were dealt to me, I made my choices, and I try to maximize my gains. And I don't I don't think I've done badly for myself. The fact that I'm here talking to you, I think I did a fairly good job of my career. Suffice it to say that my career had three innings. Three innings. Normally in cricket you play two innings, but I played three innings, and I'm on my third inning and not run out yet. The first inning was a career in industry. And in the industry, I worked in Delhi with the DCM group, and I enjoyed that, because in the early 80s, when after graduating from XLRI in human resources profession, in the early 80s, it was a changing time for HR. And just as it's changing time for all of you here today, it was also a very transition time for us, because in HR, people were moving away from the industrial relations and welfare orientation kind of issues to more professional HR, and HR being more as an enabler of business and an enabler of business processes, performance management, hiring the right talent, putting the right person in place. So it was a very interesting time, and I spent a good long years there in one firm, and I came to I took a small break in between for 3 years after my industry experience was over. That was the time I had my second child, and we were. And again, I wrote in those 3 years that I took a break from my career. I did not just sit idle. Like, it's like a lockdown here. You're locked down with the children. You're locked down with the kids, and the two small children you're looking after. Those who are, not yet got there but might get there. Whether you're a man or a woman, you'll realize that when a child happens, life changes. So those 3 years, I enrolled for my PhD degree in Punjab University, Department of Psychology. I did not go back to management, because I felt that my heart is now more in psychology. And I was very much curious to understand nature of boss and subordinate relationships, because that was what triggered my mind when I was working in industry. I had a very curious and strange relationship with my boss, who largely left me alone and left me to figure things out, and I enjoyed that. But at the same time, I kept wondering whether when I'm going to get a lot of direction and stuff to do. So, and then I observed also around the organization that I worked with, that different kind of bosses, and some bosses were so strict and so controlling oriented, and the morale in their departments was not so great. And there's some bosses where there was some complete freedom, and some bosses where they were very inspiring bosses. So I did my PhD in managerial leadership, to cut a long story short. And boss subordinate relationships, I enjoyed a lot of good insights there. I could do another lecture just only on what we did, but a very scientific, research based kind of thing. Uh, Having done that, I came to Mumbai and I said, let me teach. It's good fun teaching. And I started teaching once a week in the evening. When my kids were being babysat at home, I would go and teach once a week at NMIMS Business School. And within 6 months, I decided to make that my next innings. So that was my second innings that started as a professor. And then, I spent a good 15 years in NMIMS Business School teaching. And then later on, once we became a deemed university, I was the first dean of the School of Business. I spent 3 years plus another 2 years more being the dean. I moved to Dubai because my family was moving there and everyone got a job. We moved to Dubai with the SP Jain Center of Management. Couple of years later, we decided to come back. And I said, now, come on, I've had enough of this. I can't be a system worker anymore. I want to be a free bird. And I started my own firm called Open Spaces Consulting. Now it's 14 years, no, 13 years since I've been doing this. And it's been a good ride so far. And I hope that this will be my, final innings. I'm not going to say my last innings or whatever. I'm going to say it's going to be my final innings till I get run out, whenever that happens. Whether it's now or whether it's 20 years from now or whether it's 40 years from now, whenever. So it's been a good journey, very inspiring. There are many stories along the way I could share about what challenges I encountered and what contributed to my successes. But I'm not going to take time out to do that. You've had lots and lots and lots of people coming talking to you about their life stories. That's what Tarun told me when he spoke to me. That people come and share their life
It was
stories.
truly inspiring, ma'am, whatever you said so far. Actually, it is very inspiring, ma'am, and the kind of young generation, where they look at it, they are, they are very impatient and all. The way you have dealt with your career, I think is truly inspiring. And the way, means I feel that at the core, some patience and resilience is there inside, what I can feel about you. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of students, they are very young, curious minded. They will learn a lot by your life journey, I feel.
One of the values I learned early on from my father, and my father worked with one company all his life, and that was 37 years of professional life. As an engineer, he joined a company called Voltas. It still exists. And he retired from there as a vice president. So he started as a junior sales engineer, and he spent 37 years. He saw so many storms, and he would come home and share a lot of stories of what's happening in his office. And one quality I imbibed from him was that you need to weather storms in your life, and you need to continue to persevere. And if you get into that frame of persevering in your life, no matter how many ups and downs, I've had many ups and downs, many setbacks in my work and in my career, and many times when I was completely euphoric and winning lots of awards and getting a lot of recognition, and times when I was really down in the dumps and nothing was working out. There have been its own times, but one thing I learned from my father was that perseverance is what it takes. You just stick in there, dig your heels in, and like I said, look at the hand of cards that life is dealing you and make the best deal that you can. It's like a game of rummy or like a game of teen patti or flash or poker or whatever. Some cards you have been dealt with, no? You don't have a say in what cards you get. But then when you're playing your game and everyone plays the game with reference to other people who are players also in the game, and you play your chances, you maximize your gains and you try to go as far as you can with the cards that have got dealt to you. So that was a quality that helped me persevere through a lot, and including the last 4 months in this lockdown, and it's the 5th month running. So in the lockdown, and I've left home only a couple of times, and a couple of times we've gone out for drives and just go out for the car, go for a drive and come back. And I'm very fortunate. I have a spacious house, I have a nice terrace, I do a lot of gardening, and I'm doing my work from home. There's a lot of work which I'm doing just from home. I work through weekends sometimes, and it's always interesting. So thank goodness for perseverance, and thank goodness for determination, and thank goodness for just digging your heels and sticking in there. That really helped me go. So enough now for me. I want, if whoever is attending, I can see the 122 participants. Can you just, Mr. Ranjan, perhaps you can share with me how many of these 122 participants are students? What percentage are
More
students?
than 90% are students. I don't feel more than 12, 13 faculty are there. Rest of all of them are students only. And the student is mix of senior batch and
Okay, I just want
fresh batch also.
Okay. I just want the students to put in the chat window one message saying, currently, where are you? Currently, are you in a hostel, right? Hostel. Or if you're in a, staying with your parents, then write parents. Or if you're staying in rented accommodation, write rented accommodation. So just put it in the chat panel, guys. And let me see where you are right now. And in the meantime, I will bring up my presentation. can't see the chat window. How do I see the chat window?
Ma'am, at the bottom.
At the bottom, chat is there, ma'am. You can just click that.
It's not coming in. Okay, so I can see here everyone is saying parents, 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 hostel, parents, parents, home, staying with parents from Assam. Some are signing in from Assam as well. Some are in rented accommodation, currently staying in maternal uncle's home. So this lockdown was actually quite sudden, and people got caught, you know, and someone staying with their family in Dehradun, home with parents, and I can see in the house with parents. And many of you have moved out from hostel and gone back to parents' house, haven't you? Isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. They have actually. There are very few who have been, trapped in. I would say trapped in the sense they wanted to go home, but they could not go. So they are in hostel, roughly 60 odd students, and rest of them are at their respective places. So our classes are moving online. Just after lockdown, within a week time, we have started our class online. We had very good ERP and technology system. So it was backed by vision of our founder. So we could immediately catch up on the whatever was happening around.
Excellent. So at least you were technology ready. So what is this? This is, what is this? How many of you know what this is? Okay. I'm going to say this is a boomerang. And you know what's a boomerang? A boomerang is an instrument. It's been developed by the Aborigine, tribal populations of Australia, and that's why it's painted all these lovely colors. It's a tribal thing. It's a weapon, and when you throw a boomerang, it's supposed to, if it hits an animal that you're hunting, they're hunters, tribals. If it hits the animal, fine. It's sometimes thrown so strongly it can actually kill the animal. And there's evidence of Aborigine graves that have been dug up, and they found men with dead bodies or remains of dead bodies with a boomerang stuck between their ribs, and the ribs all fractured. So boomerang is so strong, and if thrown in the right way, it can actually kill animals and human beings. And if it doesn't hit, then it comes back to you. It's designed in such a way and it's thrown in such a way that it twirls and it comes back to you, so you don't lose it. So it's a weapon, but it comes back to you. It's not supposed to go out there and do its job, but if it doesn't do its job, it comes back to you. So many of today generation of students like you are called the boomerang generation. Why is that? That is because you all boomeranged and went back home. And you've got your degree. Some of you have your degrees or close to getting your degrees in hand. And there's also huge student debt that is being carried on your shoulders sometimes. You've taken loans, or your parents have taken loans to send you to college and put you through. And if you don't have a debt, you're very fortunate. It's not easy to go back home. It's not easy to boomerang home. It's very difficult. I mean, you got to sit at home and eat mother's cooking when you got used to all the spicy food and eating out all the time. You have to eat karelas and things like that. Somebody mentioned. So I don't know what, but the boomerang generation is the term applied in Western culture to young adults graduating high school and college in 21st century. Back in the Western part of the world, once children leave home to go to college, they don't come back. They stay on, they work, they take on employment, and then they carry on with their lives. They take on an apartment. It's only in India that, and in Asian countries, that children continue to come back home. But so the boomerang generation is term for those children and young adults like you who come back home. And a large percentage of those who come back home share a home with their parents after previously living on their own. Arrangement can take many forms and range from situations that mirror high dependency of pre-adulthood to highly independent separate household arrangements. So this is becoming a very common phenomenon even in the West, that children sent out to work, sent out to educate themselves, hoping to be financially independent, land up actually coming back being financially dependent. And it's not just because of the lockdown, but this is a trend which we have been seeing increasing in the last 5 to 10 years and maybe more, that more and more percentage of young people prefer to come back home. So when you do that, first and foremost, what is it that you need to do to survive? How do you survive this whole thing? How do you survive what we are going through? We have no end in sight. Yesterday, I was reading an article saying that, okay, perhaps now the projections for the COVID infections is likely to rise and increase. And by October, we are likely to get to 2 lakh cases a day, new cases every day. And we are gearing up for that. So it is very uncertain which way it will go. It's extremely uncertain. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know how soon it will finish. We don't know when we are going to get back to normal. We don't know whether we'll get jobs at the end of our studies, what kind of jobs. We don't know how many more such web classes we have to attend so that we can complete our hours, contact hours required for study and award of degree. And even if we do get a degree, will it be enough to get us a job? Even if we decide to start our own businesses, what business should those be in these difficult times, and how do we become entrepreneurs in this scenario? But before that, it's first and foremost is to survive. Now, I'm sure there has been many lectures you have had on survival skills, and there are many articles you've been reading, and every webinar seems to be on that. How to persevere, which I put as number 1, make the best of what we have, then make it large. Productive use of time and energy, invest in business skills, set your priority, utilizing your social media, and take a gap year. So many people have already given you these advices, haven't you? You're tired of listening to them, aren't you? So what's new here? Let's see. Something new I have to share with you. And I'm saying, let's get high on some drugs. Okay. Let's get high on some drugs. Now you're saying, okay, here's a teacher, or at least an ex-teacher, and she's telling us to take drugs. Yeah, these are free drugs. Now let me tell you what these drugs are and how you can get high on them in the lockdown period. First drug is called dopamine. It's not something that you inject yourself with, or not something that you eat. It is something that your brain produces. Your brain produces dopamine. It's a kind of a neurotransmitter, and it's a pleasure drug. It gives you a kick. You get a kick, you get high. It's a big part of the human ability to think and plan. And it acts the same as drugs do. So how do you generate this drug? Give yourself a hug and pat yourself on the back and say, hey, what a good boy am I, or good girl am I. Okay, so it's the reward chemical. It's how your mind rewards itself for doing a good job. And when you complete a task, so even if it is make that bed every morning when you wake up, because there's no one else to make it for you, or clean up your room, or settle your cupboard, or finish that assignment, give it in, or just tick mark that thing on your list to do, whatever it may be. So that gives you a dopamine kick. It gives you a dopamine shot in your head. Every time you complete a task, you feel, great job. If tasks are left incomplete, they just pile up, and you wake up in the morning and say, oh my God, I had to do that yesterday and I didn't get it done. Then dopamine, you're low on dopamine. You're very low on dopamine. You're just killing yourself by not giving yourself that opportunity to finish what it was that you started. Listen to music. Listen to music. Music creates dopamine and beta waves in your brain, which give you a high. So listen to whatever music turns you on. Bollywood, Hollywood, Justin Bieber, name it. Listen to music, classical. Classical is Mozart music is actually supposed to give you a brainwave alteration in your brain. If you listen to Mozart, you get an alteration in your brain waves, and that puts you on a high. Do self-care activities. Give yourself a pedicure, manicure. Take a nice long hot shower with a good massage in your head. And self-care, anything, whatever it takes to take care of yourself. Dress well. Put on some makeup if you're a lady, and dress yourself well. Look at yourself in the mirror. Feel good about how you look. Any kind of self-care is great for giving you a dopamine shot. Eat food. Yes. Food gives you dopamine shot. So you see a lot of times, I mean, I'm not saying that it's valid for you, and I'm not prescribing it by any means, but people who tend to be depressed, they tend to eat more because they need that dopamine more than normal. But eat good food. Don't go starving. Eat regular good meals. Eat food that nourishes you and nourishes your body. It gives you a kick when you say, hey, wow, that food I'm going to have is actually going to give me good energy. And the good energy just climbs up into your system. Celebrate little wins, whatever the little win was. Today I was very tempted to go out and go walking about in the marketplace with or without a mask. But I held myself back and I said, hey, let's play safe. I don't really need to go out. I'm going out just because I feel like, but not because I really need to. Okay, pat yourself on the back and give yourself a hug and celebrate that fact that I was able to conquer my impulses. Next hormone is called oxytocin. This is very intoxicating. This will give you a high like none other, better than alcohol or anything else that you might have tried in your lives. Okay, oxytocin is produced in your pituitary gland, which is somewhere in the middle of your brain. It's also known as the cuddle hormone. So this is about giving cuddles. It's similar to the hormones that get released when a mother is breastfeeding a child, or when a baby is hugging his mom, and it produces. So cuddle hormone, it's also called. And it gives you a big high, believe me. I have a 2-year-old grandchild in my house, and just the cuddles itself, give you such a mood alleviation. It's unbelievable. Playing with the dog is number one on the list. If you have a dog, play with the dog. And if you don't have a dog, play with your neighbor's dog. It helps, provided you're not afraid of dogs, that is. Play with the baby. Hugs, cuddles, play, hide and seek, play cops and robbers, play any kind of game, play with children, babies. Hold hands with someone you like, love. Your parents, maybe your person from the opposite sex. Just hold hands and hold each other and be nice to people. Because being nice to people releases oxytocin. Being pleasant releases oxytocin. And when you're not nice to people, you're nasty to people, it uses up all the oxytocin in your blood, and your blood levels shoot down and you come down in the dumps and you get depressed. So if you're saying nice things to people and others are saying nice things to you, you get more oxytocin in your blood. It gives you a kick. So don't deplete whatever oxytocin you have by saying nasty things. Hug your family members. Give someone a compliment. Hey, you're looking great. Give each other a compliment right now, online. Give each other a compliment. It's great on the chat. Next is endorphin. Endorphin is a very powerful drug. It's like opioids. They have the same effect on your body as opium or opioids or heroin. These powerful drugs that people tend to take from outside in is actually produced inside your body. Okay, endorphins. They work like morphine. They're painkillers because it's body's natural response to pain. And it relieves stress. They're great stress relievers. So if you're feeling stressed out, and there's relationship issues like big boss happening in your home, Everybody is coming under a lot of pressure, and at times the stress levels are visible, in a household. If something like that is happening, your body will tend to produce more and more endorphin. But in spite of that, endorphin is also produced by putting yourself under different kinds of positive stress. It's called eustress. If you put yourself into positive stress, stress can be fabulous. Stress can be fatal. Stress can be fabulous. So let's look at fabulous stress here. I don't know how many of you have joined any laughter club ever in your organization, but I'd like to invite everyone to join laughter therapy. And I would have done an exercise here, but I can't see any of you. So because I can't see most of you, I would not like to engage in a laughter exercise. But just hold your hands in front of you and do something like this and make a laugh. And the more you laugh, the more you get endorphins produced in your body. So join a laughter club or laugh. Laugh with your friends and family. Essential oils, aromatherapy, light an agarbatti. Light a little agarbatti somewhere, or a little perfume candle, and nice fragrances. Use a nice perfume today, or take a nice bath with sandalwood soap. It's very, very nice. Essential oils, any kind of good essential oils, fragrant oils, help to release endorphins in your body, and you can get a very good high and prevent yourself from getting depressed. Watch a comedy. Even if it is a slapstick comedy, a comedy is a great way to alleviate pain. Comedy is a great way to alleviate pain. Eat dark chocolate. It is known that dark chocolate, when you eat, now you're telling me this is not healthy, but dark chocolate I'm saying, not the milky one, which has got too many calories. But dark chocolate generally has more cocoa and less fat content and is mostly cocoa butter and not milk. So eat dark chocolate of the right kind, and that gives you a kick, which is similar to, releasing endorphins. And exercise. One of the good things about lockdown is I've been able to get my daily workout going, which otherwise I used to be, 2 or 3 times a week. I used to compel myself. I'm doing work. It's called WOAH. WOAH. Work out from home. WOAH. WOAH. Work out from home. It's great. It's great. And if you go to YouTube, which is what I do, go to YouTube, you'll find plenty of things to suit you. You'll get a Zumba exercise, which is, dancing plus exercise combined. You'll get aerobics, you'll get Bhangra aerobics. Nowadays, there's Bhangra aerobics also coming. You'll get Pilates, you'll get all kinds of exercises. I do something more age appropriate. So you've got to do something that is suitable to you and energizes. So exercise gives you good energy, and you can actually feel the good energy rising. Yeah, first time you exercise, a few days you get pain, but then that endorphin gets released to deal with that pain. And then every time you exercise, the endorphin continues to be released and the pain converts into a good positive energy. There's some ways in which you can, and one more drug, which is a very important drug, which I want to introduce you to, is called serotonin. It's a mood elevator. And that's produced in your brain. But where is it found the most? It's produced in your brain, but you find if you do analysis of the body, it is found in your intestines. Why is it found in your intestines? Because there are some gut bacteria we all have. And those gut bacteria when they are fed appropriately, they give you a kick in your mind. The stomach is connected to the brain. Remember that. Your stomach is connected to your brain. If you've got stress, you get acidity first. Or if you've eaten wrong, you get acidity and a headache first. So your stomach is connected to your brain. So serotonin is, though produced in the brain, is found most in your gut, in your gastrointestinal tract. It's a mood elevator. It governs your psychological function. So if you don't eat well, I've seen people who are doing keto diets, and I've seen people who are doing intermittent fasting. After a point, it affects them mentally. It affects them mentally, not immediately 1 day or 2 days. It affects them mentally. It affects them psychologically. So because the gut bacteria are not happy. Your gut bacteria are unhappy. And because your gut bacteria are unhappy, your brain is unhappy. Functions are governed by serotonin, which is produced in the brain. How do I give myself a serotonin kick? How do you give yourself? Meditating. If you do, I know you're young people, meditation is supposed to be for the old timers, but even a 5-minute meditation that just focuses attention on your breath for 5 minutes a day can make all the difference. Believe you me, it makes all the difference. Why am I saying this? Because the mind it works on a chain reaction. You know what's a chain reaction? Those who are engineers and from science background will know what's a chain reaction. A chain reaction is a chemical reaction that produces energy. And a chemical reaction that produces energy feeds the chain reaction, and the reaction becomes bigger. And the reaction becomes bigger and produces more energy, and it feeds the reaction one more time, and the reaction becomes still bigger. And produces even more energy, and it produces energy that feeds the reaction, becomes bigger and bigger and bigger till it reaches critical mass. And inside a nuclear reactor, that's what happens. Once it reaches critical mass, if it's not managed, it explodes. So the human mind is like that. The brain, the energy waves in the brain are like that. They create energy, and the mind produces its own energy. So it produces energy that feeds a reaction. So if you're thinking in circles, sometimes the same thought keeps repeating, especially when you're stressed out. At night, you think the same things again and again, again and again, again and again. And each time you think, it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you wake up in the night and say, oh my God, it's all stressed out. It's happened to all of us. I don't believe there's any human being that doesn't suffer from mental chain reactions. Okay, so when you meditate, what do? You focus on your breath, or you focus on an external object, something to look at, or you focus on some aspect. You focus on the breath, the mind starts going into its chain reaction, it wanders. And then suddenly you say, hey, where am I? I was supposed to be meditating. You bring it back. Okay. Again, it might wander and you bring it back. Again, it might wander, you bring it back again. So the chain reaction gets broken each time you meditate. Each time you bring it back. Over a period of time, enough serotonin is created in your brain. Every time you bring it back, you break the chain reaction, you get a serotonin kick. And every time you bring it back, over a period of time, the serotonin is produced more and more when you meditate. And because the serotonin is produced more and more, it alleviates depression, it alleviates down in the dump, to be in control of yourself and your moods. So it's a mood stabilizer. Meditation, even 5 minutes a day. If you haven't begun, begin now. Any form of meditation, any form, whether it's pranayam, Kapalbhati, or it's just simple meditating on your breath, or whether it's a prayer that you may do, or it's a 5-minute silence you might want to maintain and just think about one thought all the time, or you want to just look at an external object and meditate on that. Meditating is just 5 minutes a day. You don't have to do full long hours of meditation unless you want to. If you haven't begun your meditation journey, lockdown is the best time to begin. And begin young. I started too late in my life. And I said, I wish I had done this when I was younger. I started too late in my life. Don't leave it till it's too late. Running produces serotonin. As part of my fitness routine, about 2 years ago, I started running, and not 2 years, about 1 year ago, I started running, and I used to run, and it was great. Then the lockdown has happened, and my running coach is asking me every day, let's do it, something about it. But it gives you a high. Running, swimming, cycling, any kind of a long endurance kind of an exercise, cycling and swimming. I know a friend of mine who goes cycling 40 kilometers a day every day. And he's in Delhi. And he goes in Delhi. He goes, I go to Purani Delhi and all every morning at 5 a.m. I get out and I cycle 40 kilometers and I come back. Sun exposure gives you serotonin. Right now, there's not much sun happening because it's monsoon, not in Pune and Mumbai at least. I don't know about the rest of India, but sun exposure, give yourself enough sun, at least 1 hour of sunshine every day. And walking in nature gives you serotonin. So go to the park, go to the woods. If you have parks and woods, here we have only concrete jungles here in Mumbai. But go to the park, go to the woods and take a walk in nature. Swimming, cycling, all these are great. That was my drug fix for you. So give yourself a fix of drugs that you can get high on during the lockdown. All possible. And you'll find your mood is so optimistic, you won't feel the need to get out of the house. You don't feel the need to get out and expose yourself to the virus. Things are getting worse. Today you have to be more careful than 1 month ago. And 1 month ago, you had to be more careful than you were in March 18th when it all started. Problem is we started with a bang, we locked ourselves in, and now we are beginning to get loose and lax about it. But today we need to be more careful and protect ourselves more than we did yesterday. So I think I will stop over here. Yes, now I'm seeing the chat window. I couldn't see the chat window when I was presenting.
Devi sir, there are a few questions and answers. Can you read for ma'am?
Okay.
Yes,
So
yes, sir.
I can see 3 questions.
Yeah, ma'am, will with your permission, David sir will read for you and you can answer those questions.
Ma'am, is that fine?
Yes.
Should I read the question? Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, so this question is from Abhinav. Good
Yeah.
morning, ma'am. I am Abhinav, a student of HR. Like you talked about human psychology and you have almost 40 years of experience and you did your PhD in both subordinate relationship. My question is that how has this relationship evolved over these 20, 30 years as we have seen a lot of disruption in the technology and in the management style? And ma'am, how is it expected to grow in the times to come? Post-COVID specifically?
In my time, we had bosses whom we would die for, and we would follow them to the end of the world and drop over from there if required. And that was in organizations. And today, I think 2 things have changed, not only bosses, but also followers. We were great followers. We believed in our bosses. We were inspired. We didn't look at them and want to kill them. We didn't look at them and find fault with them. They had their faults. Everybody had their faults. But we simply got inspired. And just because he was a boss and just because we were inspired by our bosses. And today, there are, I think more than anything, it's the nature of followership that has changed. A followership that, and I think it's for the better. Everything is for the greater good, because our bosses got away with murder and mayhem sometimes, we didn't have much of a say in that, and we were followers, just blindly following. But today the followers are more have had to change completely, and no longer going to be accepted. Bosses are not flawless, so bosses have to find ways to manage their flaws, which in the past they didn't. So leadership style has to manage their flaws more than they have coaching at the senior level. I say, okay, let's manage our weaknesses rather than manage our strengths more than, than. So how do you manage your flaws? There are ways you can work around it. So, for example, you see a river is flowing, you know, um, and a mountain comes in its path, and it never goes up the mountain and goes there. It goes around the mountain and then continues to flow. No? So I have to learn how to manage around the flaws. There's something that I know I'm not good at doing. How do I manage? Get a partner, find different strategies. So yes, boss-subordinate relationships have evolved. There is much more equalization and much more questioning of authority than before. So anybody who comes and appears bossy or tries to inspire doesn't really work that way. You have to equalize with subordinate. There will be always, there is the negative part of it, there is an increasing tendency to kill the bosses. Please don't kill your bosses. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help your subordinates. It doesn't help your organization. It doesn't help your boss. Post-COVID, it's unfortunate, but things are going to get more transactional. There's going to get less human interaction. It's going to be more about your ability to deliver and your ability to meet the goals and targets that have been set for you. So, so it's going to be more driven by logic and rationale. Yes, it's less going to be driven by your heart. And you have to find your own ways to inspire yourself sometimes, and do the things that you believe in doing, and align yourself to the organization and goals, which is what your boss is also doing. So those are ways in which things have changed. Yes.
Ma'am, we have two students, Rinki and Nish. You can speak now. You can ask a question, Anish. Yeah, Rinki.
Yeah, hello, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Good
Yes,
afternoon, ma'am.
ma'am.
Ma'am, my question is that now you are being a HR as well as the psychologist. The psychology has increased in all the sectors, whether it's in the finance sector, marketing, or anything. So my ma'am question is that the cognitive behavior is one of the biggest stocks in corporate world today. So how do you think that as a youth we should react to the situations which are happening in the market and the cognitive ability to cope up with that? Because it is a like a you said about the boomerang. Mostly now the corporate gurus are saying that is a theory of karma which the youth has to learn. So how to react to that things and how to increase the consciousness to understand and grapple that thing?
See, there are two ways you can do. If you're a very emotional kind of person, then I will recommend you start thinking into your feelings. So looking at how you can put logic and rationale into your feelings. Try and sort them out. Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? Feel the feeling fully. Don't pass judgment on the feeling. This is who you are. And look at what the feeling is telling you, and look at how the feeling is moving you to make yourself a better version of yourself. So these are all things that if you're a very emotional person, how do you manage that? Add logic and rationale to your emotion. If you are a very logical, rational, non-emotional kind of person, then I say you need to start feeling into your thinking. So in the first case, I'm saying think into your feelings. In the second case, I'm saying feel into your thinkings. Because your thought process has a certain, so start saying, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what my logic is telling me, this is what data is telling me. What is my feeling behind that? What is it things that I'm valuing? What are the things that I'm undervaluing? What are things that seem to turn me on? What are things that don't seem to turn me on? And try and feel into your thinking. Get in touch with that feeling. Okay? So you can think into your feeling, you can feel into your thinking. It's only when thinking and feeling get aligned, and I don't know if that's the answer I'm giving you, the cognitive process that you're talking about. It's only when feeling and thinking are aligned, that's when you feel more stable and more, central, more centered in yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Rinki, you can go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you so much for such a wonderful session. Firstly, today I get to know the logic behind the exactly meditation. I suppose to think that is basically aligned to concentration and all. So thank you for enlightening us for that. Ma'am, my question to you is that first question is like that today we youngsters are basically that you have learned from your father is the perseverance that we should be tenacious to our work towards our work. So my question to you is that we youngsters got bored so easily, like we need something new day and day, we need some new things or new adaptations, so how to just get through that perseverance quality in us?
Okay. Even I need new things every day. Okay. Even at my age, being a very persevering person, I still need new stuff every day to do. But it's how we find that new stuff. I'll just tell you a story. Once I had a encounter, with an artist. He was from Egypt, and he was very famous. He's one of the world famous, calligraphy artists. With the Arabic calligraphies that they do. And the it was beautiful. His art was beautiful, and he had paintings in which he's used just calligraphy with the verses from the Quran and many lovely things. I can't describe his paintings to you enough. But someone in the audience that day, it was a lecture come demonstration from him. Someone in the audience asked him, tell me, how do you hold the calligraphy pen? At what angle do you hold the calligraphy pen? Okay, so that you get the right, what is the right angle to hold it? So he said instantly, he says, it doesn't come just like that. I cannot tell you it is 40 degrees or 50 degrees or 60 degrees, because any of those are out is not right. And he says you have to meditate on it. And then finally one day Allah will reveal it to you that this is the right angle at which the calligraphy has to be set. And then that is the discovery or the insight that comes. Now, why am I telling you this story? The story I'm telling you is because it's only through deeper engagement with what is in front of you, what is your reality, what is here and now, that you can discover something new. Okay. So I need something new. I do the same workout every day, but I do it in a new way every day. For 17 years of my life, I taught Maslow's need hierarchy. I taught it in a new way every time. Okay. And I taught it every semester, every year for 17 years in a different way. And only when I ran out, then I say, okay, now I want to stop teaching because I can't teach Maslow's need hierarchy one more time. Anyway, that's a joke apart. But you can discover the newness in the present and in the existing. And if you want to keep jumping to something different before you have explored or exhausted this option fully, then it's destructive. It's destructive to you. So there is a creativity which adds to your yourself and to you who you are and your character, and there's a creativity which is too random and too unconnected that distracts you and depletes you and dissipates you. So I'm not recommending dissipated new innovative things to do. I'm saying think of innovation outside the box, inside the box. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but there are lots of ways in which we can do that. And that's something I discovered for myself too.
Yes, ma'am, I got it. And ma'am, my second question to you is that basically it's related to HR, that the virtual reality means these days it has not reached its potential in the consumer market yet, but it is growing in the corporate training. And even there are ranges of training in terms of diverse safety training, or we can say customer service training is still growing and experiencing in the market. So, what's your viewpoint upon this?
Can you say it one more time in a different way so that I can get the grasp of your
Yes,
question?
yes, ma'am. Basically, I have read an article in which I have read about the artificial intelligence now being emerging these days in the coming month because of this lockdown and all. So virtual reality being one of the part have still not reached its potential in the consumer market,
Yeah.
but still it is growing in the corporate training world.
Yeah.
So there are different training and ranges of training given in terms of safety training or customer service training, or we can say even the leadership development, it has also been given. So what would be the skills in the workplace that would be there or needed to enhance this virtual reality in the future upcoming?
I have a term that I say, become a mushroom. Be a mushroom. Now, what is a mushroom? Everyone knows, no? It looks like an umbrella. It's got a little cap like that and a stalk. So a mushroom is got a cap and a stalk. Tomorrow's world, post-COVID, or whenever this COVID is over, if there will be a post-COVID, I don't know. Tomorrow's world is for mushrooms. You got to have that's the top part of it. You must understand all aspects business. It's becoming very complex. Business becoming exceedingly complex now, but you must understand nitty-gritties, complexities, trying to understand how things work, the market, the industry, the domestic sector, the international sector, everything about the domain that you're going to work in. There must be a generalist view. That's the generalist view. The stalk of the mushroom, the big part of the stalk, is the specialist expertise that you carry. So I may be an HR expert, I may be a psychology expert, behavioral expert, but at the same time, it's the general, I have to be generalist as well. If I don't understand that, I won't be successful. I'll just be caught in my ivory tower of psychology and my behavioral, work, and not have the bigger picture in mind. And part of the reason that I find it easy for us to generate business and get work is because we have the business perspective and the specialist expertise as well. So be a mushroom. And particularly in post-COVID world, it's a new term that I'm coming. I always used to say I should be either a generalist or a specialist. Now I'm saying you've got to be a mushroom, which means you've got to have general, knowledge, experience, skills, as well as specialist knowledge, experience, skills. And artificial intelligence, yes, it will meet its potential very soon, and it's going to get accelerated because of the COVID lockdown, because now we want to go more contactless and less, and perhaps it's for the better. So learn how to use those robots rather than be displaced by a robot. So there was one big cartoon I came across. You're being replaced by someone who knows how to use a robot, not by a robot. You're not being replaced by a robot, but you're being replaced by someone who knows how to use a robot. Or, you're going to be replaced by someone who knows how to program that robot, or knows how to give the specifications for the robot. So you have to integrate that into your skill set. You have to integrate it into your skill set to either know how to use the robots or to know how to program the robots that people use.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Ma'am, there are a few other questions. I'll read out the next question. This is from Sonali. Good afternoon, ma'am. First, I'd like to thank you for giving us this positive energy with your positive thoughts. I want to ask that the way you are inspiring yourself with all these things is this the same way you inspire your employees? And especially in this pandemic situation, most of the employees having fear of losing their job. So how are you motivating them? Because understanding each and every one psychology is very tough.
I believe that there is a greater good in all this, including COVID, and I'm an eternal optimist. In fact, there's a very interesting book that's out these days. It's called Learned Optimism. It's called Learned Optimism. I would suggest if you can find some way to get a copy of that book, please do get a copy. Please do find a way to get a copy of that book. Or so learned optimism is very very important part of life. I hope that answers your question, or is there some part that I'm leaving out? How to stay positive?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. It does answer. Ma'am,
So you
I'll
learn how to be optimistic. It's not something that intrinsically by nature we are pessimistic. We think the worst is going to happen. We remember all the negative things that happen. We never remember the positive things. But there are ways in which we can learn optimistic behavior.
okay, ma'am.
Pull ourselves out of that.
Ma'am, the next question is from Shilpi. Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for the session, which gave a very positive vibe. A few months back, I was reading an article about using oxytocin, and HR professionals are implying it for fostering trust in an organization. So, what is the application of oxytocin in your organization, or how do you practice it?
I've not done it consciously as an intervention. Frankly, I'm not, I didn't know, I was not aware of the fact that HR managers are employing oxytocin. Are they giving shots or something? I don't know what they're doing. I have no idea. But I was only saying I use the oxytocin bit for you to look at how do you keep your mood high on your own. Not so much as an organizational, dose of oxytocin to be given. But yes, I do know that many companies have these happiness interventions, happiness at the workplace interventions. Many companies have laughter clubs. They come in the morning, the first thing they do is laughter therapy, and everyone gets high. And many organizations employ motivational speakers to bring up the moods. And I know one organization that has designated one person as the Chief Josh Officer. Chief Josh Officer. He's the one who keeps the Josh and the spirit of the organization high, and he's responsible for being the Chief Josh. So their happiness indexes today. So I don't know if they're actually using oxytocin shots, but I know that there are many interventions that are being done for keeping people's mood engaged and positive and uplifted. As we get more and more into the 21st century, there's might be reasons, plenty of reasons for us to get depressed. Plenty of reasons for us to feel sad. Plenty of reasons for us to feel, oh my God, why did this happen to me? There are not enough reasons for us to feel positive about life. So give yourself reasons to feel positive and feed the positive monster. Don't feed the negative monster inside your head.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next question is from Shweta. Hello, ma'am. My name is Shweta. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this inspiring session. My question is, what are the steps taken by your company to make employees happy in this stressed situation?
My organization, we have 5 employees, so I'm talking to them on a daily basis. That's all, and the work itself is inspiring. We are coaching people. We are, the work itself is very gratifying. Fortunately, I'm in a place where I've been able to find my place where I enjoy what I do, and I can bring that. But like I said, many other larger organizations are actually doing happiness interventions. And there's lots of methodologies also, structured methodologies available to do happiness interventions.
Okay. The next question is from Sakshi. Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Sakshi and I'm a student of HR. My question to you is, nowadays, work pattern and market is very dynamic. How we can focus to maintain a work-life balance and at the same time excel in our work as well as focus on our career growth perspective?
In fact, I'm very worried about, the work from home thing because it's causing more stress for people. First of all, you're doing work on a computer terminal instead of actually physically interacting with people. Second of all, you're not going out too much. You're going eating out or whatever and having good times and parties and picnics as we used to. So I'm very worried about, how this whole thing is getting impacted. And yeah, so I guess it's all about. Can you just repeat the question one more time? I think I lost the question somewhere.
I'll repeat the question. Nowadays, work pattern and market is very dynamic.
Okay.
How we can focus to maintain a work-life balance and at the
Yeah.
same time excel in our work as well as focus on our career growth
So
perspective.
it is work-life balance. So there's a lot of stress about working from home, and the impact it's having on your work-life balance. Even now, I had to lock my bedroom door and stay here because if I sat in my study outside, my grandson would be walking in and out all the time, and therefore it causes its own problems. And I have so many friends who are holding responsible positions in organizations. They're on their computers throughout the day, and the children are around, and everything's going crazy. So work-life balance, believe me, I'm also working a lot with CII, and we are trying to come out with some kind of work-life balance guidelines for working from home. Organizations need to adopt, and I think this is something that HR professionals will adopt, some guidelines for working from home to give people work-life balance. And uh, some number of hours of work, or some timings of work where you can log in and log out, so you can regulate some timings. Because when you're working in an organization, there's a time to come and a time to leave, and staying beyond that. So there are, and then there are also options of giving perhaps a little more holidays when you're working from home. And so there need to be more guidelines. I think HR needs to come out with more guidelines to control the number of hours people are working, to provide for that work-life balance. But till such times you don't get there, I think you have to decide for yourself what your boundaries are. If I'm a morning person, I get all my stuff done in the mornings. And all my work stuff done in the mornings. If I'm an afternoon or a late evening person, depending on my body cycles, if I'm the kind who stays up late, I can get all my stuff done. Then you can categorize work. Like for me, I do a lot of writing work. So when I'm doing writing, I have to do it late at night because I want no interruptions, or early in the morning. But if you ask me, but any work or any engagement before 11 a.m. is very difficult for me, because that time I'm in my roles as a housekeeper and as a wife, as a grandmother, as a mother. So I'm doing all my duties there. And so I sit down for work at around 11 o'clock, and then I complete it by maybe 4:35. I'm fortunate. So work-life balance, then you have to decide what chunks of work you do when in your life, and then stick to that. And if you keep this mobile phone close to you, then you will keep checking it all the time. So I make sure that the mobile phone is on some table in the same room, but it's not next to me, not in my hand, or not in my pocket. And if if I'm sitting for dinner, it's somewhere in the drawing section of my, if I'm lying down sleeping, then my phone is somewhere on the table, which is on the opposite side of my room, not next to me. Because the minute I keep this phone next to me, it's habitual. I just keep checking. If nothing, I just open my WhatsApp and check new messages, even if the messages are not worth it. So reduce the number of times you check your phones. And then try and schedule all emails to be sent in the mornings, all homework to be done in the evenings. So if you take those chunks and then sit down only to do those chunks of work, I think some balance is possible. But it's for you to decide what works for you.
Okay, ma'am. The next question is from Ravi. Good afternoon, ma'am. There's a lot of talk going on the importance of mental health. Yes. But how much is the corporate world really giving importance to mental health? What more is needed to be done in this arena?
I have a friend of mine who's working for a large firm, and she tells me about how, young kids these days, the techies, there's a suicide almost every week. It doesn't make headlines for different reasons, but there are very frequent suicides that are happening in younger generations for different reasons. It could even be, just a broken relationship. And so mental health is a big concern. Many organizations have got open mental health counseling lines. You can just call up and seek help. Many organizations, they've employed 30, 40 psychologists just to be on the phone, and if someone calls the number, just to be available 24/7 on that line. So organizations are giving increasing importance to mental health. It's not just about the 8 hours you spend at work, it's also about your mental balance. And so many companies are investing, increasingly hiring psychologists and hiring people to invest in that. So I do believe it's becoming, and I'm very fortunate that in our time nothing like this existed. There was a lot of taboo, but now a lot of taboos are coming out. Things are a lot better today than they were 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, as far as organizations' awareness and interventions into medical health is concerned. So yes, companies are doing stuff.
The next question is from Millie. Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Millie. Nowadays, as almost everyone is working from home, that reduces traveling time as well as expenses. But work pressure has increased. That has decreased our physical activities, affecting our mental health. People are trying to avoid this mental pressure and trying to cope up with the situation and accepting the new normal. But somewhere in our subconscious mind, that may bother us that we are struggling now and make us feel depressed. So, how to control our subconscious mind? So, this is a question from Millie.
You have to find some inspiration to continue exercises. You have to find some inspiration. In your own home, you can do yoga, you can do meditation, you can do workouts. I do workout every day. Earlier I used to do, before lockdown, I used to do twice a week. Now I'm doing it daily. You wear a smartwatch that gives you number of steps you have done. I already walked for 5 or 6 kilometers on my terrace this morning. I can. So you've got to find a way to do the physical exercise, because without the physical exercise, things only get worse. And it is possible to work out at home. It's very much easy. In fact, it's easier to work out at home. You don't have to get your gym bag, and you don't have to wear your gym shoes. Don't have to, go in your car. You don't have to park your car. You don't have to go there and go to the lockers, change into your clothes. You don't have to do any of that. You just have to at home, you can wear your sneakers and you can work out. So, or you can wear even floaters and work out if you have to, or you can work out barefoot if you have to. You don't have to get ready and get out there. It's easier, in fact, I think, to work out at home. So Millie, please start some workout. Find good YouTube. If otherwise you take my number, I will recommend you things that you can do. I am quite a fitness freak. I can recommend things that you can do. Just watch a YouTube and you can follow the YouTube exercise. It's fun. Do the Zumba, if nothing else. When a day I'm feeling down, I just do a Zumba. That is, put on some Bollywood music and exercise to that, and do that like proper exercise, not just a dance. So it's possible.
Okay,
it's
ma'am.
Inside you. It's inside you. Tell me, it's your battle. If you're feeling down in the dumps, it's your battle. It's nobody else's battle. It's nobody else's battle. It's your own battle. No one else can fight that battle for you. Okay. And please share my phone number with everybody. I'm doing all coaching counseling, which is not organizational. I'm doing it pro bono, free. There's no cost attached. Just WhatsApp me and we'll give you a time slot. You can talk to me anytime. Talk to me anytime about anything that you feel you need to talk about. Anything, whether it's working out, whether it's studies, whether it's placement, anything, we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We have one last question in the Q&A box. This comes from Radhika. Good afternoon, ma'am. Some companies decided to continue with the work from home even after things get normal. So ma'am, what's your take on that? Do you feel it is the right thing to do?
I don't know about right and wrong, but even companies like Google have announced that till March next year, they will be working from home. Okay, so I don't know about right. It's a right thing or it's a wrong thing. I think it's just a new normal that's going to come, because earlier we used to get up in the morning, take a shower, get ready and go to work. And now we get up in the morning, get ready and sit in our home and in front of a laptop. I don't know if that is a new normal. It's not a right thing. I'm not sure it's a right thing. It's never, but there has to be something in it that's positive, and look for that which is positive. You don't have the tension of having office gossip. You don't have the tension of having to eat crappy food from the canteens and from the world outside on the street outside. You don't have the stress of the commute. Big thing was a commute. Someone said that there are not enough holidays in 2020. All holidays are falling on Saturdays and Sundays. So now it's all a holiday. You're at home. Yeah, it's not fun, but you've got to look at it positive. You've got to be grateful for what we have. We have so much to be grateful for. We have a roof over our head. We have parents. We have, a car in the driveway we can drive. We have an education. We've got intelligent minds. We can think, and we can take care of ourselves. I think we have to be grateful for what we have.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I think there are no more questions.
I think it was a wonderful session, and the way scientifically you explained, I think we were all kind of captive audience to your thoughts. It was actually very, very inspiring, and I get to know many new things, and I am sure that my students and all faculty members would have would have known some or other new things. So I will request David Sarasimam to please extend the word of thanks to ma'am. And
Yes.
It was so nice of her to take all questions. Please go ahead.
Yes, even me, myself, I've learned a lot of things personally. So I'm sure many of my faculties as well as students would have learned a lot of new things today. It was very inspiring, and the main topic you spoke on, as well as the survival skills that you spoke on, I think they were very practical, and I believe we can start immediately applying them from right now so that it helps us. Thank you for patiently answering all the questions of the students as well. And ma'am, we'll look forward to meet you, in campus once this pandemic is over, so that you can have a session with our students or have a session with our faculties, and we can interact more in the future as well. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the time and everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
To talk to you. Please note my phone number. I will mail out my presentation. It has my phone number on it. Please note it, and you can write me an email or call me, send me a message anytime. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.